Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me, and today we are doing our Final Four recaps. Game number one out there in Indianapolis was between Illinois and UConn. It was a rematch from earlier in the season, and Joe, it went pretty similar to the first game back in November. UConn wins 71-62. What were your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Sean, I kind of predicted going in that UConn would take this. Now, a lot of Vegas and really a lot of analysts thought Illinois would win not handily, but win pretty comfortably. And I think that's in large part because the Illini hadn't necessarily played perfect offensively, especially in those games against Houston and in the Elite Eight against Iowa. You just figured, man, they're going to get probably a few more rebounds, hit a few more shots. And that was not the case at all, Sean. This is a game that's mirrored some of Illinois' losses this year, losses the last 2 years, to be quite frank. Can't really get anyone going from three. Keaton Wagler, I think, is a prime example. I think 5 of 6 from inside 2 points, and then anything from three, 2 of 10. And that kind of mirrored the rest of the team. Not much better. 23% as a team from three. You look at the rebounding stats as well, Sean. They out rebound UConn by +7. It doesn't even seem to matter. They repeatedly would, I think, go too much to the jumpers, and I thought they could have gotten some more movement down low. And while UConn's really stout down low, I think Illinois didn't necessarily give that enough chances. And I also thought that they took care of the ball okay, but UConn took care of it way better than they did. And unfortunately for Illinois, they just didn't make enough shots in this one. I don't think there's any more overcomplicated narrative than that.
Yeah, I don't think they got good enough shots either. You know that I did like the summary post on Twitter at halftime, and I'm like, well, look, Illinois is gonna have to get better looks to come back in this game. They ended up not really doing it. Um, you know that it's hard to shoot in a football stadium, as we've been saying over the years, and three of the four teams in the Final Four made that look correct. But yeah, like some of these shots were not even close to going in. Uh, they tried to match up Hunt, and Dan Hurley and UConn were ready for that, and they were able to guard their yard 1-on-1. And Wagler gets 20, but 7 of 16 from the field and 5 free throws. Like he's going to get 20 if he puts up 16 field goals and 5 free throws. So I thought UConn did an unbelievable job on the defensive end. That's as bad as Illinois has looked offensively in a long time. And then on the other side of the ball for UConn, their offensive scheme is a little bit different. They don't go to a lot of pick and roll. They do a lot of off the ball stuff, and they didn't have a great offensive game either. They were worse from two, but they hit 12 triples. They're able to really take care of the ball, and they were just better on the day. Like this was a game that I think if it's played 10 times, I think UConn wins all 10
Yeah, and
with
Sean,
this game plan going in. Not if it was a series and Illinois could adjust, maybe they would get one. But going into this game with these game plans, this was always going to be a UConn win.
yeah, and a lot of I think it's very rare to have Final Four experience, and it kind of showed with
Yeah.
UConn here. It looked like they were the more seasoned team. Certainly, Illinois has plenty of veterans, and I know a lot of Illinois players in this game are newer, especially to their team this year. But it just looked like UConn was the more seasoned team, didn't rush shots, even as the lead. And I got to give a large shout out to the Illinois crowd. Very strong contingent from the Illini. First Final Four in 20 years. I thought they had the home court advantage. I think that arena lit up every time they'd make a run or crawl back in it. But it just seemed like they were one move behind UConn each time, whether that was Underwood or whether that was the players. Keaton Wagler, I think, played overall a pretty okay game, but certainly needed more help for the rest of his teammates. And, I think UConn, again, Sean, just more contributions overall, timely shooting from Braylon Mullins again. That guy's, probably going to be a problem in another game we preview here. So, again, really good job on UConn. I think Dan Hurley's proving out that he's one of the better March coaches of our lifetime. I think that's already been proven. And I think it's just on full display again for the nation to be reminded.
Yeah, this UConn team, I think it might be his least talented team of the last 4 years. But they just find a way to make it ugly and hit timely shots. And Silas Demery Did not have a particularly good game. He was 2 for 8 from the field, 4 fouls, but he almost had a triple double: 7 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. So they're finding ways to impact the game and winning without necessarily shooting the ball well. I thought Terrace Reed was great. 17 and 11. They probably should have gone to him more because Illinois didn't really adjust to the. They did throw a few doubles early in the second half, but we were wondering if they would do that at all, and they had to get beat up by him for a half to even think about it. But Caravan doesn't have a great game either. Just 1 of 8, 1 of 7 from three. Like this wasn't like a great offensive UConn game either. I think they just did unbelievably well in the defensive end, and then they made enough shots to just stay ahead. But there is an injury concern for UConn. Obviously, they won. They're going on to Monday. We'll save that for the preview video. But they got some from their bench. It was just I think it was nowhere near UConn's best, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, and what people need to be reminded of, Sean, they did slump a few times this season, but UConn's still a damn good team. People remember if they didn't lose that game to Marquette, they were very likely the fourth one seed, and I think people needed a reminder. And I think them being one of the last two teams in the country is the strongest reminder of anything, aside from winning the whole damn thing.
Yeah, it really comes down to the fact that maybe their play style gets a little bit easier to play against when you see it twice a year in the Big East. They had a great non conference. They were fine in Big East play, but they were not particularly that good. They didn't win the Big East regular season. They did not win the Big East tournament, and they didn't play great against Furman in the round of 64. Like they, after all that, they're in the national championship game again. It just seems like that if Dan Hurley gets any like top 25 caliber roster, I think he's going to be able to take them to the top. X's and O's wise, he was excellent. Obviously, he's losing his right hand man next year, Luke Murray, to Boston College. I think that will have a pretty big impact. But man, I mean, I think Hurley was steps ahead of Brad Underwood here, and I think Brad Underwood is an excellent coach, one of the best in the country. But wouldn't see that from last night. But all right, Joe, unless you got anything else to add, we'll wrap it up here.
No, all good, shot. Just take a look at our other videos. If you're watching prior to the final, please check out our other recap and then our preview.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.